Eagle Community Television presents Community Connection with your host, Mike Cooper.
Hello and welcome again to Community Connection from Eagle Community Television. Thanks for watching, and thanks to our producer, Jeff Durall. We're at Rarick Hall on the campus of Fort Hays State University, second floor, with Dr. Christie Brungardt, who is assistant professor and director of the Women's Leadership Project, and also co-founder of Jana's campaign. And there were two or three other titles that we didn't have time for to get some time for the actual interview, Christie. But it's good to have you with us, and thank you very much for taking the time to remind us again of the purpose of Jana's campaign as it was originally begun.
Well, Jana's campaign was begun after our 25-year-old daughter was murdered by her ex-boyfriend. She was a student at KU Law School. She had done all kinds of work that would make you think this could never happen to Jana, but it did. And we realized if this can happen to Jana, it's happening to everyone. So we created an organization called Jana's Campaign that is about prevention against and education about gender-based violence. And so we look at gender-based violence in several different contexts. Through Jana's campaign, we've really, I'm going to say narrowed our focus, and it's still pretty broad, probably too broad, but we have 5 programming areas. We have worked on some public advocacy. We worked on public policy early on when we first started. We have not done as much of that the last couple of years, but we still have that as a programming arm, because we will at any time if it looks like there's something coming up in Topeka that we think needs some attention. That's one of our programming arms. One of them is education and prevention. One of our programming arms is working on campuses. We have a campus action initiative because, of course, here we are on campus, and the more we learn about these issues, the more we understand how prevalent it is on college campuses. And now, of course, the country is talking about that a great deal. So we do a lot of work on college campuses. We have another programming arm that is about engaging men and boys in this work. It is, my husband, Kurt Brungardt, really does the bulk of that work, and he talks to young men about these issues because as a culture, as a society, we really have not talked about these things, and in fact, that is still a difficult thing. It is very difficult for people to talk about these issues. For many, many years, it was considered a private matter. You need to keep that at home. It's private. Well, it's actually a public health concern, and it is a concern of everyone, and it should be a concern that all parents, all employers, all college and K-12 administrators are concerned about. So there's all kinds of reasons why engaging men and boys is actually now even part of the national agenda to try to get more people to talk about these things. Because forever women, my husband always says, too many women have been talking to too many women, and not enough men have been talking to men about these issues. And so that's one of our initiatives. And then our last programming area is community awareness, is community awareness and public action, which of course really melds into pretty much everything else that we're doing. But we do believe that we can't just work in the schools. We can't just work on college campuses. We can't work just with men. This is a community-wide problem, and it's going to take a community awareness initiative and the willingness for people to step up and do something about it.
The education and advocacy program, certainly very important. One of the biggest impacts I think you've made through this campaign, Christie, for you and Kurt, is the advocacy, the education. You've been educating Jeff and me this morning, as a matter of fact, with some things that we weren't aware of. So you're speaking to students. At what age, what grade level do you engage the students?
So we started a program called Love Doesn't Hurt, and we're gearing that towards middle and high school students. And we've talked to students 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We've talked to students freshman through senior. Some schools, for instance at Waukeeny, they brought their middle school in when I talked to their high school, and so I talked to every 6th grader through senior in high school when I talked to there. We have not started working in the younger grades. We are seeing more and more signs that there is a need for that. In fact, middle schoolers and high schoolers, but particularly middle schoolers, are saying to us, you need to be working with younger kids. I had a young man at a training I did at an FCCLA conference a few months back, and he said to me, so he was in middle school, He said, so are you doing this work in younger grades? And I said, well, no, middle school's pretty much where we've started. And he said, well, you really need to start, because my little sister's in the 4th grade and she's already dealing with some of this. And I was mortified, but it was a reality check. And so we know it needs to be done, but at this point, we're working with middle and high school students and with college students.
Well, certainly middle school, I think most parents would agree, is one of the most vulnerable areas and one of the areas of greatest impact that you can perhaps make. What feedback do you get? Students, teachers, administrators, that type thing, Christie?
Well, what has been really interesting to me as we've created this middle and high school program is that it is really students that are driving the initiative. It's really students. They'll hear me speak somewhere, say like for instance at that FCCLA conference that I did some work at last fall. I had a number of emails from students from different schools. There were 8 or 10 different schools represented at that conference, and a number of those schools, they had students email me and say, if I can get my principal or if I can get my teachers excited about this, would you come work just at our school? So I have been really excited that students not only recognize that this is a problem and they need help with it, but they're willing to take action and do something about that. And so we've gotten that kind of input from students, but then when we do go, I've been doing quite a few whole school assemblies and around the state, and then the administrators are making sure their teachers and their counselors, they have everyone in the building present for that. And that's what it's going to take. It is a social problem that's going to take everyone in every community to work on this if we're ever going to eradicate gender-based violence. And it's no different in a school. It's going to take everyone in the school. So we've done work with coaches. We've done actually quite a lot of work with coaches. But the feedback that we have gotten has been, thank you so much, because we knew we needed to be talking about this, but we didn't know how, so we just didn't. And so we believe that this is such an important piece of education that nobody knew how to tackle. And honestly, we're still not experts. We know way more than we did in 2008, for sure. But we're not by any means experts. We still go to trainings ourselves. We still go to try to learn more about how we do this and how we should be doing it. So the feedback we get mostly is from administrators, teachers, thanking us for doing it, and then follow-up emails and phone calls with specific questions. The students' feedback that we get, we get students emailing us oftentimes. And oftentimes they're emailing us about what should they do in this situation. Well, we are not trained advocates and we are not trained counselors. So we really serve, at Jana's campaign office, we serve more as a connector. Here in Northwest Kansas, we connect them with options. Around the state, we figure out who it is they should be talking to. But at least they're asking someone. And so there's more of a conversation happening now than there's ever been.
Well, one of the reasons we're doing this particular community connection is because February has been designated as Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. So again, it sounds like it's an education, a school, a community, and a broader social issue that we really need to be aware of, Christie.
We absolutely do. And I was so naive to that. And in fact, I think as a parent, it's so much easier to just stay naive than to admit it could happen to your child. And it does happen to people's children. My daughter Jana, I mean, we lived here in Hayes. She went to Roosevelt Elementary School. She finished out at Wilson Elementary School. She went to Felton Elementary School. Then she went to Felton Middle School, and she graduated from Hayes High School. And then she went to KU. I mean, this is a Kansas girl. And yet we get so desensitized from the bad news all the time about so many things. We want to believe, and I believe especially as parents, we want to think that couldn't happen to us. And I am living proof that it can.
How prevalent is the problem, would you say, Christie?
Well, I think that it's increasing all the time, so of course that's really hard to get a grasp on, and it depends on what you define as the problem. Is the problem bullying? Because nearly every school, if not every school, for many years has had anti-bullying campaigns, and that's great work, and it has needed to be done. But I believe where there's been maybe a lack of communication is they start teaching kids about don't be a bully when they're in kindergarten. And that's a good message for them to learn, but then they get into middle school and the bullying behaviors change. but we don't talk to them about that. And the older they get, the more severe the bullying behaviors can and oftentimes do become. But we don't talk to them about that. We're still giving them the same message as we did when they were in kindergarten: don't be a bully. And people aren't connecting the two. Gender-based violence is nothing more than abuse of power and control. Exactly what you would say about bullying. But the bullying behaviors change.
Talk to us, if you would, as an educator, about the new ways of interaction that can be dangerous for young people. And I'm thinking now of all of the influence of social media, video games, things like that Jeff and I certainly weren't aware of, and I don't think most of us are.
I wasn't either, and in fact, here I am. I mean, I struggled to even figure out what was Facebook when that came out. And so I am certainly no technology expert, but I make a point to learn about all this as much as I can. And when I've just recently even learned about some apps that are available, they're localized, they're available in many communities that have an institution of higher education, but they are too easily available to anyone in that community. And they are the worst thing that I have ever seen so far as bullying a person. I mean, you can think about the Steubenville, Ohio case. And of course today, nobody would say they want to be the next Steubenville because they got lots of attention. Nobody wants to be that school that no one had ever heard of until something horrible happened, and they had 3 young men who were sexually abusing a young woman who was incapacitated because of alcohol, and then videoed it and then put it online. Well, nobody wants to be that school, but also nobody wants to do the prevention work that has to be done to keep from being that school. And so I'm so excited that so many schools around the state, we're so far, and we really just started our Love Doesn't Hurt program in the last 8 months. But so far, we're working with somewhere around 80 schools from clear around the state. So this week I'll be in Hoxie on Friday, tomorrow, and next week I'll be in Fredonia. So I mean, we're blanketing the state. We're mostly working with FACS and FCCLA programs. We've worked with the State Department of Education with the people who run the state FACS and the state FCCLA programs. And so that's what we've used to really get access into schools. But once those FACS teachers, FACS students, and FCCLA students start understanding what's going on, they start talking to friends, and before long the administrators are saying we need to be doing this school-wide. And so I think the time has come that people are much more aware, but they just don't know what to do. And in fact, the CDC has now recognized or identified that teen dating violence is one of their major health concerns for the country.
That's the Center for Disease Control.
The Center for Disease Control says, and you can go to their website and read a great deal about teen dating violence. It's become one of their cornerstones of things that they're working on. So it's definitely increasing in the middle and high school population. And of course, being here on a college campus, these students are saying, we need to get these people taught before they get to campus. That's why it's so bad here. Nobody's doing the work before. And so another issue about all of that, especially in K through 12 education, is so far K through 12 has not really been in the spotlight with the whole Title IX law and the things that are driving all of this same kind of work on college campuses, but the exact same rules apply, and they just haven't gotten to K through 12 yet. But I think administrators or teachers are all figuring that out and saying we have to do something about this. And so I think the time is right. I think it's pitiful. We have to do it, but it's going to have to be done.
Can you take the last minute or so and give some advice for parents as a professional educator in this area of teen violence?
Well, as a parent who did it all wrong, I may not be the best one to give advice because I didn't know and I didn't want to know, and I actually just didn't want to learn, because these kinds of things, whether it's dating violence, domestic violence, sexual assault, technology abuse, whatever it is, those things didn't happen to me. That happened to those people. And I don't know who I thought those people were, but it wasn't me. And as a parent, I think the best advice I can give you is just be aware. Educate yourself on these issues. Know about the apps that are available to your kids. Know that there's an app that they can download that's called Poof. And if there's apps you don't want your parents to see on your phone, you download Poof and tell it which apps, icons you don't want to show on your phone, and poof, they're gone. You're the only one that knows where to find them. there's all kinds of technology that's driving this horrendous behavior. And I think that, coupled with this, I don't want to know that from parents, that'll never happen to me, is creating a disaster.
Well, the good works that you and Kurt have been doing are extraordinary for educating us. Please keep up the work.
Well, thank you.
And your emphasis, your passion, and your enthusiasm really comes through.
Well, thank you.
Dr. Christie Brungardt, Assistant Professor and Director of the Women's Leadership Project, co-founder of Jana's campaign, Our Community Connection. Thanks for watching.